I picked up a 50cc Tao Tao moped for my son. I think it's commonly known as a MadDog. And he's actually away at the moment, so yesterday I took it for about 50 miles just to check everything out and see if it was going to loosen up and fall apart, and actually ran surprisingly well. It on the handlebars sort of has your standard handlebar motorcycle setup with your horn and your headlights and your indicators on the left, your starter switch on the right. There is a key ignition down there. I added obviously a cell phone holder, and in that red Ziploc is the registration, so that doesn't get wet if he's out and about. It's got these funky shaped mirrors, which I had to tighten everything down and put some blue Loctite on to keep them from vibrating loose. And then the 3 cluster gauges, which the light indicators work great, left and right and high beam. The fuel gauge works well. I put about maybe 50 miles on it and put half a gallon of gas in it to top it up. I'd say the odometer and the speedometer are not accurate. They appear to be about 10 miles an hour faster. They're indicating 10 miles an hour faster than it actually is, because I did put my phone in with a speedometer GPS program app on, and it was about 10 miles an hour off. Average speed was about 28 everywhere. Got it up to about 45 on a long downhill. And on a steep incline, it will slow down to maybe 15, 16 miles an hour. Other than that, for 50cc, pretty good. The only other issues we had was on the left foot peg. I know this is the right foot peg, but there's a pin that goes through, and there's a C-clip. And at one point, I looked down, and the pin was coming out. The C-clip hadn't been installed on the left-hand side. The yoke seemed to be a little bit wide, so I don't think the C-clip held. I got a cable lock thrown on there for my son. I pulled the, it does have a fuel pump, so it's actually pretty good. And that's probably because the tank is so low. It needs an auxiliary fuel pump to get the fuel up there. Being a guy who'd tweaked mopeds and small engines in the past, I did pull the exhaust off and take a look at that. And it appears to have a catalytic converter inside of it. There's a sintered metal, and there does not appear to be like a baffle that you can drill out to get it sounding a little more throaty or to get more performance out of it. After about an hour riding, my back was starting to hurt a little bit, my ass. So I actually loosened up the shocks a little bit. It's quite a, for the money. You've got a spring shock with air system in there. You can add some air for dampening in there, just like standard motorcycle. My other ride is a KTM 450 SX, so a little bit of experience there. I think the hardest thing on the ride was when I got back, I took a look at the tire pressures, and that rear tire should only have 10 psi in it, and it had 50 psi in it from the dealer or the factory, whoever put that in. So it's got all LED lights except for the headlights on this model. It does have a little bit of a restrictor on the inlet here. I pulled that off and ran it without it just to see if I could get a little more performance out of it. Didn't do that. I suspect if you take this whole assembly off and you put a K&N in there, if you really want to tweak it, that'd be the way to go. There's a serviceable filter in there, air filter. Kickstart and electric. There is a lock for a helmet, and the only issue I had was the headlight wasn't aimed properly. So last night I went out and aimed the headlight. They actually work very well. However, the plastic piece that was on here it actually broke already. So we'll make a little bit of modification. But other than that, it's actually a very feature-rich little bike for a 50cc moped.